What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about weapons. In this story, when all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left wondering who or what is behind their disappearance. Zach Kreger, the writer and director of Barbarian, has returned to the scene of the crime with his sophomore efforts of another horror epic, filled with mystery, thrills, twists, and turns. Now, Barbarian had one heck of a marketing campaign where majority of that trailer is the initial setup of the first 20 minutes. I was hooked, and honestly, I wish a lot of studios took note in how to market their films, just leaving you with enough intrigue. And I know that everybody loved Barbarian, but if I'm going to be honest, I thought it was a really good film, but I just wasn't as high off of it as everyone else was. I remember when the first teaser for Weapons dropped, and I got the same exact vibes as I did watching the preview for Barbarian. My thoughts were already spinning on what the true plot was going to be. Was it aliens? Government sleeper agents? Demonic possession? Witches? A cult? Or was it all gonna be just a dream? A prank that has gone way too far? So many possibilities. This easily became one of my more anticipated films of the year because once I start having dreams about an upcoming film that I have not seen yet, the excitement is that good. So I'm happy to report that believe the hype, because this was one hell of a wild ride. First off, it's very important to note that this is not your conventional horror film, so just like Kreger says, I'm going to choose my words carefully as to not give too many of the details away. This sets the stage kind of like a drama thriller such as Prisoners or Gone Baby Gone, where the town tragedy has affected various members in the community in many different ways. Like Pulp Fiction or Strange Darling, we are treated to 6 different perspectives, a non-linear narrative, if you will, that is continuously developing, intersecting, and unraveling. And as each arc recontextualizes the last, the closer that they get to the truth, the more bizarre and horrific revelations begin to make itself known. I absolutely loved everything about this movie, starting off with the structure of this script. Now, I wasn't sure how patient I was going to feel about these multiple story arcs where we are running the same timeline in 6 POVs where some of these characters would lead their own path, but also cross each other's paths and interact with one another in somewhat of a repeated scene. Surprisingly enough, every perspective felt fresh and thoroughly entertaining, offering another jigsaw piece to a much bigger picture. And eventually all these arcs culminate to a wicked third act that pulls a wide range of emotions from its viewers. It's freaking nuts. Quickly jumping into the technical side of things, I absolutely love the cinematography and how it complements the overall production design. While we have the white picket fence and suburban facade, the way that the wide shots would just swing around the tight corners of a dim-lit house to the meandering shots of a distorted figure emerging from a dark doorway from possibly down the street at night feels like a collection of flavors from filmmakers like Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, and even Stanley Kubrick. You actually get to see the direct influences of The Shining in here, and I couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. Also, I absolutely love that the score didn't dictate the gradual state of dread you were feeling. Sometimes they would just linger in the silence for so long that it was actually quite starting to get disturbing. And when the score does make itself present, it is not shy to match up with your pounding pulse. Just like Justin Long's character in Barbarian, I knew the movie was going to have a dark sense of humor, but I was not expecting to laugh as often as I did. There is a section of the movie which is led by a character named James, played by Austin Abrams, who pretty much is a drug addict who spends most of his time breaking into places, stealing stuff to sell just to afford his next high. Abrams' miscreant performance, from his decision-making to his response in fear, earns many of the viewers' laughter. And also, the way that the third act kind of comes to a close is pretty much played up for laughs, and I thought it was weird at first, but I thought it was a perfect opportunity for them to insert some levity, resulting in my packed auditorium to really just cheer up at the screen and out loud. Did I mention that the horror elements absolutely suck here? No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. But the movie does take its time building up towards a lot of the terror and the jump scares that are deemed to be effective, kind of like the dream sequences where Kreger is absolutely taking the opportunity to have fun with, especially with the startling images that took me by surprise. Yes, I really love me some good jump scares, but when I feel like an absolute bitch, just jolting in my seat, screaming out loud, grabbing my own chest in panic, I feel embarrassed because it was just that good. I have never came close to that feeling of nearly having a heart attack and also shitting myself at the same time since last year's The First Omen, and you know what jump scare I'm talking about. Also, there were some significant shots that got underneath my skin, moments that were so terrifying I froze like a deer in headlights and my heart just sank into my chest, encoved. But even as something as simple as maybe a figure from afar just waving was so nerving to me. I just couldn't really get a response out. Fuck, just thinking about that one little moment is just freaking me out. Outstanding performances to the entire cast all around, including like Julia Garner, the teacher with the troubled past, and having the town's magnifying glass casted over her, and also Josh Brolin, who is the father of one of the missing kids who is struck with grief and is obsessed with finding out the answers. Alden Ehrenreich and Benedict Wong were also surprised at how much of their emotional and physical performance they were able to stretch and range and put on display here. But I would have to say that the most compelling performance would have to go to the one kid actor here, Kerry Christopher. Now, Christopher's performance goes through peaks and valleys where a lot of the elements in his story is doing a lot of the heavy lifting and is also paying off to where a lot of the audience is trying to reach. Getting into my mixed and negative opinions, now call me selfish, but I could have used 30 minutes of more movie, even though the movie's already 2 hours and 8 minutes long. Also, Josh Brolin's character, I know that a lot of people are going to probably complain that his story arc got shortchanged. Even though his character is probably your favorite, he's probably the more vital one in comparison to the other perspectives. And I think that some of the humor, while it might work for a lot of people, it might feel a little bit jarring, somewhat of a disconnection to the rest of the story. There is a particular character that appears in the later quarter of the film where they end up answering a lot of the questions that we've had answers to, but somehow creating even more questions in which we are never made clear, in which we end up running out of time because of that abrupt ending that they go with. Last but not least, although my favorite prediction does come to fruition, solidifying itself with the images that appear early on, I do think that it's best that you tame your expectations with the direction of this particular idea that they go with, kind of like in Barbarian, where you find out what's in the basement, you find out what's really going on, and that might affect your overall experience with the rest of the movie. So, tame your expectations. Be open to the ideas. Overall, while the rest of the world is trying to nitpick this movie because it landed 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and only fell 5% from its opening weekend, I have landed on the other camp where I actually loved this movie exactly for what it is. And you know what? This is definitely sitting high on one of my absolute personal favorites of 2025. Zach Kreger has proven once again that he is a very innovative and effective storyteller, exploring characters and horror outside of the genre norms. I am very excited to see what he's capable of with a Resident Evil reboot / reimagining, but if he is serious about doing a sequel to Weapons, he has definitely left the door wide open to expand upon that world. Well, all right, guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. I highly recommend it on the big screen. Look forward to more reviews. I'm Jaren Agbanawa. Gonna want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of your day to hear me talk some movies. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you guys at the theater.